Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talk with Ross podcast with me, host Ross. And I've got a very exciting guest here, a tremendous guest, Aaron. So Aaron, please introduce yourself to the guests.
Yeah, so hi, my name's Aaron Marcus, and I've been very, very fortunate in life. I've been a full-time actor for a little over 40 years now, and I do everything that I can get my hands on from film to TV, commercials, radio spots, narrations, commercial modeling, which is modeling for real-looking people, and I've done over 800 workshops spanning 3 continents. And I help people break into the industry or advance their career. And got a great family and a wonderful dog. And so I'm good.
That's absolutely fantastic. So I want to rewind a few years because obviously you said that you've done you've done your acting stuff for quite a long time now. So what age did you decide to get into the acting industry?
Yeah, and that's a good question because a lot of times you hear about people who say, well, I knew from a very young age this is what I wanted to do and I just followed my dreams. Yeah, it wasn't that way for me. I didn't get started until my late 20s. And it actually, I wouldn't say an accident, but it wasn't part of my game plan. Um, I had dropped out of college. I was a musician for 7 years, singer-songwriter, was touring, and and I was working with my brother when he decided that he didn't like touring and didn't like performing, which is not really good for musicians. He gave me a year's notice. To make a long story pretty short, went back to school. I thought I was going to be a physical therapist. I needed a part-time job while I was in school. And I met an actor, and he did mostly TV commercials. And I thought, boy, that sounds like fun. That sounds like a great part-time job for me just to support myself while I'm in school. And I did that for 2 years on a part-time basis. And at the end of those 2 years, I decided, you know what? I love acting. And so I just dropped out again and became an actor, tried it for 1 year full time. And that's what I've been doing.
That's amazing. So like obviously some people who do acting, they do like these like the acting school you go to and you got to do like acting classes and all that sort of stuff. I mean, did you have to do any of that, or was it just you just took a leap into the career and then you just fell in love with it and just escalated from there?
Yeah, it kind of makes me laugh because I did things backwards. So I'm not recommending that you follow my path. What I did was because I didn't know anything. And I got started just by working with my instincts. I guess I had some natural abilities, and that's how I got started. After doing it for a little while, it became very clear to me that my my natural instincts would only take me so far. And I'm not saying, look, there are some people in this world who've never taken a class, have never studied, have had tremendous success. But that's unusual. I mean, most of the great actors that you see, these people have studied for a long time. So what I did was I started working, getting some work. But then when I realized that I really needed to have some kind of system inside of me that would allow me to tap into emotions if I'm not feeling it that particular moment and really know what I was doing. So then I went back and started studying while I'm still working. And I never went to university or anything for that. I just studied with people privately, and I still do. I'll take a workshop periodically. Normally, it's like one-on-one stuff, but I took some classes, but it was mostly working with mentors and coaches and people. That's the style that works best for me. And I did take, by the way, and I don't know if you're interested in talking about this, but I have taken, it was mostly one class, very well-known teacher, and the class was absolutely horrible. The information was really good and I was learning things, but the teacher himself was, he, I didn't like him. I thought he was nasty. I thought he was cruel to actors. And some people, what I learned was some people like to be treated poorly. Some people like to be embarrassed. Some people found it therapeutic in some way. And I walked out of the class because I just thought, I'm not going to be treated like this. There's no reason. It's not helping me. So I learned some things. But yeah, so I went back and I started studying, and without having that information, there's no way I could have had the success that I've had.
Mm. I mean, that's quite interesting that how you just mentioned that, because like obviously if you're doing these like workshops and you're having these one-to-ones and private sessions, and you've got a tutor who's supposed to teach you, you want to go in and enjoy your lesson, because it's like what you said then. Obviously, if you're getting treated like garbage, you're just going to want to leave. And, it's unfair on yourself. Do you know what I mean? I just don't understand the concept behind it, or why people would like to be treated like that way. You know what I mean? And I get
Yeah.
acting and it's tough and everything. And it blows my mind when I watch a film or something and how they do the scene, and it's just like, for example, when you mentioned about feelings and everything, and it's an emotional film or something like that, it's like, how how do you cry? Like, what do you do? Like, I got told, I don't know if this is true or not, but someone said to me, he went into acting, he said they put a hole in your pocket and then they pull your hairs on your leg with some tweezers. And I got told that. And I was like, is that actually true? Like, do you actually have tweezers in your pocket and pull like your leg hair? And I don't know.
Well, look, there, there are a lot of things to say about that. One, like when you were saying, why would people want to be treated poorly? Look, there are some people who feel like they don't deserve to be treated well.
Mm,
And being treated poorly, they feel like it's something they deserve.
right.
It's kind of sad. And I can also tell you, there are some people in some of the classes that I took, they were using it as a form of therapy, which I think is a very dangerous way to do it.
Yeah.
Because the teachers are not psychotherapists, they're not psychologists, they're not trained for that. And I experienced this where and I don't want to say this is the norm, but I did see it once or twice where a teacher was smart enough to know how to push people's buttons, how to get them to cry, to feel horrible, to show that kind of emotion, which is not a hard thing to do. If you can really get a sense of the person and know where they're needy and know where they're having issues in their life, and you just push and then they'll break down. And for some people in the class, they view that as a great acting technique, something that it was just incredible. Look, being able to cry, there are lots of different ways to do it. I mean, for some people, they will just tap into something very emotional in their life, feel it, and then show it to the camera. There are other people, and like everybody has different styles, and there's no one right way to do it. Some people, and it's kind of similar to what you were talking about. I've heard pulling out a nose hair and then turning to the camera and then the tears start coming. I've heard of people putting a sliced onion in their pocket and they'll just reach into their pocket and, wipe their eye a little bit. And because of the onion, they just start tearing up. And then other people do it, in a more organic way. Just like there are some, acting teachers who will tell you you've got to create the life of your character from birth and take it all the way up until the time of when you're saying your lines. And look, that's great for some actors. And I certainly would never say anything negative about that. I've never done that. I mean, I will think about before I'm saying my lines, what happened to my character right before the scene started. So to give you an example, and I don't want to make this an acting class, but it seems like you're interested in learning more about this. So let's say, for instance, I'm running late for a business meeting, and this is what's happening in the scene. My first line is walking into the boardroom, and I say, "Hey, I'm really sorry I'm late." Okay, so that's an interesting first line. However, if I think about what caused me to be late, my alarm clock didn't go off, my watch didn't go off on time, I hit traffic, I got lost driving to this particular place, I couldn't find a parking spot, I had to run 2 blocks to, go up the steps and go into the office. And after all this, I go, "Hey guys, I'm really sorry I'm late." Now it gives me a reason to show why I'm late without stating why, but I feel it. And so, everybody uses different techniques. It's just like with musicians. If you play guitar, there are 1,000,001 different styles that people use. And there is no one right way. And anybody who says, "Oh, when you're playing guitar, if your right hand is angled in a certain way, it's not the proper way," who cares? What matters is, does it affect you? When you're listening to the musician, does it take you somewhere? Just like you were talking about when you're watching a movie. Does it move you in a certain way? Does it make you feel certain things? Does it feel organic and natural and real to you? And if so, whatever these people did, it worked. I was just reading an interview with a famous writer, and he was talking about this exact thing that you were referring to. And he said, "You don't have to create a life. Just say the lines. Just say the words. That's all I need you to do." So once again, that's one way that people do it. Some people use method, and they will, stay up all night and sleep on the streets because they're supposed to be a homeless person. And if that works for you, then do it. But the most important thing is, does it seem believable? Is it real? If so, then whatever you're doing is right.
That's some interesting facts and information that you've just mentioned then as well. Particularly that you've mentioned something about with your lines and everything. Now, have you actually ever forgotten your lines whilst you've been on camera? Like I'm assuming everyone's done that sort of thing where cameras rolling, everyone's on set, everyone's ready, and then you don't have your lines with you to hand, and you're like, "Forgot what I'm saying."
Oops. Cut. Take 2. Sure. Yeah. And look, it's one thing if you don't work and you don't practice and you walk in and you're unprepared and you can't get your lines out. That's one thing, and that's unforgivable. But we all make mistakes. We all goof things up, say the wrong word, get stuck. I've seen very, very famous actors make mistakes. And what's important is how you handle it. And there are some actors who think, especially ones who are just getting started, they think, "Oh, if I goof up here, they're going to fire me and they're going to replace me right away." And I've never seen that take place. I mean, if you just think about it logically, there are, over 100 people on the set, with crew and everybody else running around. And all of a sudden, and you've already been cast. Don't forget, you've been auditioned. Lots of people have seen your audition. You might have had a callback. You might have had multiple callbacks where they have you read again. And for them to fire you on the spot and then start trying to find somebody else, that's I've never seen that happen. So what you want to do is not apologize, which I've seen people, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Can I do that?" Don't apologize. We made a mistake. You made a mistake. Just do it again. And sometimes, it's nervousness that will prevent it. Matter of fact, I don't mind sharing this with you. It's not something I normally talk about, but you brought it up. It might have been one of my favorite shows of all time. It's a very old show. It was on HBO. It was called The Wire. And people either love the show or they really just don't like it. I loved the show. And it was created by a guy named David Simon. And I got cast in that, and I had one line. And what's interesting is sometimes the one-liners are much more difficult than when you have multiple pages because you kind of pop in out of nowhere sometimes and just say a line that isn't really connected with a conversation that's taking place. And the crazy thing is, normally I remember it. It's and initiate a criminal investigation of any official tolerating such. Now, see, I remember it right now. 20 years ago, when I was on the set, or whenever the show was on, I struggled, and it took me 7 takes to get that one line out. Now, granted, it's a weird line. It's not. It's not the way the people normally speak. I was an attorney general. And just to say, and initiate a criminal investigation of any official tolerating such. It's weird. And I struggled, and I would go and initiate, cut, okay, let's do it again. And initiate a criminal, cut, so yeah, it happens to everybody. And also, just be honest with you, all of a sudden my heart rate is going up. I can feel my palms getting a little sweaty. I'm feeling incredibly embarrassed. Feeling like I'm not being a professional here. I got it. I worked through it. I finally got it. It was hard. And so, yeah, it does happen to everybody.
It's quite interesting, and I love like some of your facts that you share as well, and how you can go, oh well, yeah, answer the question, and then you've given an answer to something that you've actually done, and be like, oh well, yeah, I was in this part and I tried to do this, and I've had to do it like 7 times. So it's just absolutely amazing. So is there any, like, obviously, like when you've done a film, do you watch it back and think to yourself like, oh, that's so cringy or something like that, or do you just, I don't know, like, because obviously when a person like myself will watch a film, because obviously I'm not in it, I'll be like, oh, it's really good, it's fantastic, or I'll be like, it's a bit crap that, CGI was a bit shit. You know what I mean? But like, when you're watching it yourself and you're waiting for your part to come in, and you're like, do you sit there and get like excited, or like how do you feel when your film comes out?
Yeah, so look, first of all, you never know what might happen. Um, there was a movie that I did, and oh gosh, I just forgot the name of the movie. But I had a scene with Judi Dench, Dame Judi Dench, who is just, she was unbelievable. She is such an incredible actor. She was so generous. She was so kind. I mean, I just because I knew I was having a scene with her, I purposely did not have any contact with her ahead of time. And part of the reason too was I was her priest and she was coming in for a confessional. And so I kind of felt like I don't want to be close to her. I don't want to share a conversation or a meal. I feel like I need to kind of separate myself. And I also was concerned about being so nervous about working with her because she's such, as an Academy Award winning actor. And um, so I finished shooting it and I went to watch the movie and my scene was cut. So you're talking about, getting prepared. What do you think? It's like, what happened? So I wasn't in there. But and by the way, I know they didn't cut it because they thought it was bad. Things get cut all the time. Sometimes, especially TV, it's timing. They overshoot typically, and there are scenes that are always cut. And the same thing with movies as well. So when I do watch something, it's not like I sit there and watch it over and over and over and over again. Um, I know that things can happen. They might cut things short. And the other thing too is, and this is something that I've learned, and not something at the very beginning of my career, but here's what I've learned. Even if it's something where I'm not 100% crazy about, I wish I would have done things differently.
Mm.
What I do is I think to myself, you know what? In that moment, I did the best I could. And I'm really proud of that. I didn't run off the set. I wasn't screaming and crying because I didn't do what I wanted to do. In that moment, I did the best I could. Even with that incident I just shared with you about the wire. In that moment, I did the best I could. And I hung in there. I fought through it. Um, and so, and I think that's a really important lesson for people, that you don't kick yourself. Just like if you go to an audition and the audition is horrible, you know you didn't do what you prepared to do, and who knows why. There could be a million and one reasons for you getting thrown off. You know, is it other people who you saw in the waiting room? Was it the way the casting director talked to you? Did you just kind of blank out? Did they give you some notes that really messed you up because now they're asking you to do something very differently than what you planned? And, you know, I've spoken with people because I do a lot of mentoring and coaching with people online. And sometimes, you know, they'll talk to me about how they just goofed this up and they felt so bad. And it's so important to just know after every audition, if you happen to book anything and you book the job, no matter how you felt it went, you need to go out and treat yourself. Do something kind and nice for yourself because you did it. And might not have been exactly what you wanted to do in that moment, but that was the best you could do.
That's absolutely fantastic, you know. And I'm sat here just listening to you talking, and I feel like you're preaching to me, and I feel like, you know, I feel like you're giving me a pep talk about something. I'm like, I'm like, you know, I'm finally touched here, you know. Like, I feel like I'm about to go do a bit of acting.
But you know what's interesting? And first of all, thank you. And I'm glad this, you know, has some meaning for you as well, and for all, you know, all your listeners. But I think it's just, even though, like, when I'm doing workshops or, like I was saying, private sessions and stuff, yeah, this stuff is acting and modeling and industry related. But in many ways, I think this has nothing to do with the industry. I think these are just really helpful ways to live your life. So, as a matter of fact, there was, it was funny. There was a big architectural company, and the guy who was president of it was being interviewed in a big architectural magazine. And the guy takes horrible pictures. And they were going to be taking some photos of him for the article. He contacted a modeling agency, and this is in Washington, D.C., in the States. And he asked, hey, do you know anybody that could help me take better pictures for this article? And the owner of the agency recommended me. So I met with the guy and I showed him some techniques and we practiced a little bit, and session went really well. He loved the photos. He said, normally I look stiff, I look uncomfortable. I just don't look like a real human being when I'm photographed. And he said, these shots were great. He actually hired me to give a workshop for all of his workers, all the people at the architectural company, from the architects to the salespeople who are going out and pitching ideas for new jobs. And I used the same information. I slightly adjusted some things, but basically it's the same information that I tell actors who are going out on auditions, and what to expect and techniques to use. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about, it's really very universal and things that can be helpful to many people in all walks of life.
Mm. quite interesting. And also, you mentioned about modeling. So, when you say like modeling, do you mean like you have modeled, or you're the photographer of the person who's being modeled? Like, what's all that?
Yeah, okay. So, no, I'm not a photographer, but I'm really glad you brought up modeling because normally you say the word modeling and everybody thinks of fashion models, which, I understand because they get a lot of publicity.
Hmm.
Now, in the States, we're not that smart, so I can't change the numbers for you, but in the States, if you want to be a fashion model, and I'm talking about a high fashion model, a supermodel, you are going to be between 5'9" and 6 feet tall. Once again, I can't do centimeters. I'm not that bright. Your measurements are going to be 34, 24, 34. You have to get started at a pretty young age. And once again, yes, there are some exceptions to the rule, but pretty much if you look at all the supermodels, those are the statistics. For guys, you're going
Yeah.
to be between 6 feet and 6 feet 2 and wear a size 40 jacket. And for both men and women, you have to have a very specific kind of look. It's the only industry that I know of where women make more money than men, which I think is very interesting. So, what they do is they do runways and they promote high-end designer clothes.
Right.
These people can make a fortune walking the runways, doing the catwalks. Now, there's a whole other, and I've never done any of that because even though I have the statistics, or I had the statistics for being a fashion runway model, I never had the look. Um, However, there's a whole other world of modeling out there that a lot of people don't know about, but there's actually more work available than fashion modeling, and it's called commercial modeling. Commercial models are sometimes the incredibly handsome guys with perfect bodies, beautiful women, who promote anything from being in Gap catalog, Abercrombie and Fitch, to maybe being a patient who has a bad stomach ache for a pharmaceutical commercial modeling ad. These are not TV commercials. These are still photos that you will see in magazines, newspapers, billboards, posters, on the sides of buses, on products. And I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those things. The nice thing with commercial modeling is they need everybody. They need people who look like tough, maybe construction workers. They need babies who are, 1 or 2 months old. They need people in their 80s for, senior living centers, and that kind of stuff, and everything in between. One of the reasons why I love doing commercial modeling is that I get a chance to use my acting skills, but I'm just being photographed by a photographer. So what they really love is, let's say it's a pharmaceutical ad, and I don't know, I've got a horrible headache, and this is a pill that will cure the headaches. Well,
Yeah.
I got to be able to show that I've got a migraine, because if I just do one of these, that guy doesn't look like he's sick, doesn't look like he's got any kind of headache. So I would actually have to show that. And I use the same acting skills of tapping into previous experiences in my life that will give me that feeling. And then typically what I do, and there's a whole technique that I created for this and that I share with other people. And I'm going to look away from the camera, feel whatever I need to feel, then look wherever I'm supposed to look, do the shot, look away, come back. So anyhow, I love doing commercial modeling work. And the other nice thing about it is, look, for fashion, if you want to be a fashion model, you're going to be living in, London, Milan, in Paris, in New York City, maybe Florida and Miami and Chicago and LA. There are limited cities where, supermodels actually work. Commercial models, we're all over the place. And even if you live, in Liverpool or smaller cities than London, you're going to find commercial modeling work because there's always advertising being done. So anyhow, I love doing commercial modeling.
So how did you fall into the commercial modeling side? Was it through acting, or was you doing commercial modeling before your acting sort of stuff?
Uh, they both started happening at the same, pretty much at the same time. My very first job was a commercial modeling job. And once again, I mean, when I started, I knew nothing. As a matter of fact, there's something called a headshot, and that's what actors use to help them get work. And it's a still shot, typically from your chest to the top of your head. And what you want to do, and I do entire workshops just on headshots because they're crucial to having success in the industry. But you want to be able to portray and show how you are going to be cast, what kind of projects are right for you. And if you're not honest with yourself, and like for me, look, I look like everybody's next door neighbor. I'm the family proctologist. I'm not the handsome guy. I'm just like the regular kind of guy. You're the high school teacher. I'm the college professor. I could be the doctor, the attorney. And that's my look, just a regular kind of guy, not the handsome, beautiful, handsome kind of guy. And so once you understand that and you create the right headshot, that's how you can start, getting submitted for jobs. So when an agent that I spoke with said, "Hey, I think, you think you've got a good look for this stuff. Why don't you go out and get a headshot?" I didn't even know what that was. So I just asked her, I said, "Well, do you have any recommendations for places to go to get a headshot?" And she gave me names of some headshot photographers. And once again, just because I didn't know anything, I walked in and said, "So what do I do?" He said, "Nah, just make a lot of faces." And he took like 200-300 shots of me making faces. And it was a horrible session because I didn't have any sense of how to prepare, what I should be doing. It was not a very good start. But I guess I was able to salvage one photo from that first headshot session. And the agent submitted me, and it was a commercial modeling job. I didn't know what it was. I showed up on the set. And I said, "What are you looking for?" And they explained, and I was able to give them the look that they needed, fortunately. And then pretty soon after that, I started doing extra work first before I ever booked any principal jobs. And so I was hanging out on sets, working as an extra, just in the background. But I tell you, and some actors will tell you, don't do extra work. It's going to be horrible for your career. They're only going to view you as an extra. I feel a little bit differently. I found that I learned a lot from the times where I could watch actors, really great actors, work up close. I got a chance to network with other actors in the area who are also doing extra work. I got a chance to observe to see who are the people on the crew. What do they do? Sometimes you even get a chance to listen to the directors talk to the actors. Once again, if you're in a stadium and you're one of 10,000 people, watching football match, you're not going to get a chance to really hear that much or watch the actors closely. But sometimes you might be in a bookstore, in a coffee shop, and your table is right next to where all the action is taking place, and you can eavesdrop and listen, and it can be a great learning experience.
That's fantastic, that, and it's a bit of a shame, really, how other actors, look upon that when you've just mentioned about, oh, don't be taking the extra job or anything because people are just going to look at you as an extra, and that's all they're going to see as is this person who's just an extra or anything. But it's like what you just said then, obviously it leads to new opportunities and it opens up new doors, more avenues for yourself. Do you know what I mean? And it's all about networking, I suppose, in that sort of industry, when it comes to the modeling, or even if it's the acting side of things as well, isn't it?
And that's an interesting point, because although I do have a slightly different take. So a lot of times people say, "Oh, that actor was lucky, he was in the right place at the right time, and he knew somebody and they got it." It's not who you know, it's who knows you. I think that there's an interesting distinction there. It's who knows you in the industry. That's what's going to be really helpful. But having said that, even if you have a connection, even if people know you, you have to be able to produce when it's called upon. Because, even if it's, a famous director who's bringing in a friend, they're not going to have somebody who is absolutely horrible and make the movie look bad just to bring in a friend. The person still has to be able to do what is needed, to help support the movie, in any way. There was a movie called Runaway Bride, and Gary Marshall was the director. He died a few years ago, and it was Richard Gere and oh boy, I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting the woman's name. She was also anyhow very very famous actress. Sorry, I'm not remembering. Anyhow, the point was Gary Marshall would bring in his friends, people he worked with in the past, like Richard Gere, like, oh, what's her name? Oh, I can't believe it. Anyhow, then he would also bring in his secretary, he would bring in relatives and give them one word to say, and so he would do that for a couple of reasons. One is when he's traveling and out on location for a couple months, he wants to be surrounded by people who he knows and people he loves and people he cares about, makes him feel better. And he knows that he's helping them because they can get one word out without it being a problem. And they'll get paid well for their one day of work. They'll get residuals forever because of their one day at work. And it was interesting because there were, just speaking of extras, there were a bunch of local extras who were very angry because they were saying it's not right, it's not fair, we should be getting these, one sentence lines or one word lines, and he's just bringing in his friends. And I just thought, well, maybe I never said anything to anybody, but I was just thinking, hey, well, maybe you need to be really good friends with Gary Marshall, and maybe he'll bring you in as well. It's like, I get it, and I understand why sometimes people might get frustrated because they don't get the opportunity just, because they're not friendly with them. But, that's the way the world works. And so, yeah, it's who knows you.
Well, that's it,
Julia Roberts. That's who I was thinking of. Sorry, Julia Roberts. And she was also in Pretty Woman, with Richard Gere and Gary Marshall.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting what you say, you know what I mean? And I like this, your little quote then. Obviously, it's who knows you, not the opposite way around, and it's not who you know. I'm gonna pinch it off you now. So with like doing extras as well, and this is someone who's been in sets as well, who has been on. So obviously, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Do you know, like Coronation Street and EastEnders and stuff like that? Like it's one of the soaps over here, like that's quite big. So someone who I know, he auditioned for that and he went in to be an extra, and he had to mime the words fish and chips whilst he was being recorded. So he sat there talking to someone, obviously not actually talking, but there was just like, and then just like nodding their head. So they have to like nod their head and like, obviously you just don't sit still and like, just look at the camera while it's on. Do you know what I mean? And it's weird how you've got to do these different techniques and everything just to make it look like, because no one understands how much hard work and how much effort goes into shooting a scene or anything. Do you know what I mean? Because there could be two main characters, and then you've got, say for example, you're in a hospital, yeah, and then you've got the receptionist, you've got the surgeon or the doctor or whoever. Obviously, they're having a conversation, and then the camera pans round, and then you've got people sat in triage, you've got people waiting to be queued up and everything, or you've got people coming in from outside, where the ambulances can drop you off and all that sort of stuff. You've got all this going on, and obviously the director has to give all these people like their jobs and their roles and everything, and tell them what to say, what to do at the exact time and everything. And I just think it's just mental, just because that could be like a 5-minute shoot, but it's took longer than 5 minutes, and people don't understand what goes on in the background, behind the scenes sort of stuff. And it blows my mind, because when I watch a film or a TV program, when I get a chance to do it, I'm one of these, I'm fixated in like how it's all created, like how they actually sat there and took the time and took the effort into putting. It's just that extra tiny little detail that makes it so much better as well. And it's just blows my mind, though, doesn't it?
It's and you're 100% right. I mean, when you think about it, look, for let's say a 90-minute film, it's not unusual for it to take 3 months of shooting. You could do one page in a day, or a couple pages. Now, of course, it depends on the dialogue, how much dialogue there is. Are you talking about, are there scenes where there's no dialogue but just a lot of action? But look, there was a film that I did called Fishbowl, and I was the pastor, and I'm talking to my congregants in the church. It probably lasted a minute in the movie, something like that. And we did 20 takes just to get that 1 minute scene done. And it's exactly what you're saying, and people don't know this unless you've actually watched it. So they might do it's called a wide shot. And so I'm doing my sermon, and the cameras are picking up everything in the church. And then once that is done, then they're going to break everything down, move the cameras around, change all the lighting. And then it might be the shot over my shoulder doing individual close-ups of my congregants, getting their reaction to what I'm saying. So we'll do that a million times. And then they break everything down, and then it's over their shoulder, and now it's my turn for the close-ups. Then we do it a million more times. And so even just for, small scenes, it can take all day, to do something like that. And so, yeah, there's a lot that goes into doing a scene. And when you're talking about, like sometimes for the extras, they are told to just mime and not say anything. And it was a funny story that one thing, there was a TV show, this was a million years ago. It was on NBC, and it was called Law and Order: Criminal Intent. And I was a doctor, and my patient collapses as I'm talking to him, and I had to reach out and grab him. And then I'm talking to the stars of this particular show and explaining what's going on. So it was about, I don't know, 4 days after we finished shooting, I got a phone call from production, and they're saying, hey, we need you to come back to New York, and you have to shoot, we have to do this thing again. And not shoot it, but I have to, it's called doing a loop. I had to redo my lines in a studio. And so, of course, at that time period, I was thinking, uh-oh, they hated what I did. It didn't work. They want me to do it completely differently. And I'm feeling a little paranoid. So I go into the studio, and it's this big room with a giant screen on the wall. I have headphones on. And what they do is they play the scene back, but now I'm re-recording my lines into a microphone. So I have to match exactly the way I said the lines. What I found out was when they actually shot it, one of the extras was talking in the background. It was one of the assistants at the hospital. And it was covering up and overlapping my lines. So they needed a fresh take so they could get rid of this extra who had been talking and just do mine again. So yeah, sometimes for the extras, they're going to just ask you to move your mouth to make it look like you're talking, but they don't want any words to be said.
It's quite interesting that as well. Obviously because someone like cocked up on their end, and now obviously you're like panicking and like getting dead nervous, thinking, "Oh, what's going on? Have I messed up, or did I do this wrong, or have I said that wrong?" And obviously, a million things are rushing to your mind then you've got there, and it's like, well, unfortunately, one of the extras spoke, and it's over. It's overpowered your voice, so you're gonna have to. It's sort of like miming it, innit? In a sense, really, because obviously you're talking into this microphone, watching your lines, like obviously like watching your part, and you've got to reenact the same situation, but just through a microphone.
Yeah.
But it's just miming it,
Yeah.
isn't it? Really, innit?
I've just got to say my lines the exact same way. And because when I thought about it later, and once again, it's easy for us to feel paranoid.
Mm.
Um, like if I'm in a recording studio and let's say I'm doing a voiceover or a radio spot or something like that, and I could see on the other side of the glass, I'm able to see, the director and maybe the producer and they're talking back and forth, and I'm sitting there thinking, uh-oh, do they hate what I'm doing? And they're probably talking about what they're going to have for lunch. They're probably going over the menu of what they're going to eat. Because when I step back and I think about it, if they really hated what I did on Law and Order Criminal Intent, they would have told me then. They would have given me some kind of direction. They would have given me some notes. They're not going to wait 4 days and all of a sudden there's this discovery. I mean, the director is watching a monitor. The director has headphones on. They hear every single word that is said. So if there was an issue with delivery, they would have told me then and there. So anyhow, but I'm telling you, it's easy to take things personally. It's easy to feel paranoid, and that's why. And this took me years and years and years to figure out. But something that is just invaluable for me is that you can't take anything personally in this industry. When you go to an audition and you finish the audition and you don't get the job, it's not because they hate you. It's not because they don't like you. It's not because you're not any good. For whatever reason, you weren't the perfect person for that role. And now I'm not saying maybe your audition was horrible. That certainly is very possible. Probably not, especially if you've auditioned with this casting director in the past, because casting directors won't bring somebody else in to read unless they love what you did. Because they don't want to waste their time, and they don't want to look bad if they are sending in and submitting auditions of people who are just really not, talented actors. It's going to make the casting director look bad for the directors and the producers or the networks or the streaming companies, and that's bad for their reputation. So, yeah, you can't take anything personally. And just kind of talking about that, once again, I'm kind of going back into caveman times, but there was it was the very first streaming show ever on TV, and it was on Netflix, and it was called House of Cards. And the first 4 seasons of that show I thought was really phenomenal. And I auditioned for that show 14 times over 2 years. They kept bringing me in. I would read. Sometimes they would put me on hold, meaning that there were just a couple of us and they were asking us to hold the dates of the shoot because I was being considered. Didn't get it. Sometimes I would have a callback, meaning they liked the initial audition and now they're calling me back to read again. Instead of just with the casting director, now the director is there, maybe the writers are there. Never booked anything. And I know that some actors get very frustrated and they start thinking the casting director doesn't like them. I mean, after the third or fourth audition, whether it's for the same show or maybe the casting director is casting other things, and they start thinking, why should I even bother coming in there? Apparently they don't want me. They would have cast me. 14 times I didn't book it. The 15th audition, I booked a reoccurring role on the show. And it just goes to show, and it was a very helpful learning lesson for me. I know that the casting directors only bring back people who they like. And for whatever reason, maybe I was too tall, too short, didn't quite have the exact look. Maybe I looked too much like some of the other principals in the scene. Who knows why? But it was the 15th audition that got me a recurring role. So if you are ever brought back a second time by a casting director, that means they really like what you did.
Mm. I mean, that's quite interesting to learn and to know this sort of information as well. And with some of the stuff that you were just saying then, it just makes me wonder, like, do you have to be thick-skinned in acting? Because it's like some of the stuff that you've been saying then, and it's like, well, you know, you might go off thinking that, oh, you may have not done a good job, or like they might have said something to you and you've took it the wrong way because how they've said it towards you. But then again, could it go back to, being treated like a bit of shit, basically, and they're trying to get you into that character sort of thing, because obviously they're not feeling you're into that character. So maybe they're talking down to you just to get you back up to where you need to be, or do you think that people have to be thick-skinned, basically?
Well, you do. You really do, because there aren't that many jobs in this world where pretty much every day you're being told, no, I don't want you. And that's just the reality. I mean, it's like, in some ways we're like salespeople. And, instead of selling, you know, Mac computers, and you knock on somebody's door and you say, hey, are you interested in buying a MacBook Pro? And they say, you know what? I really like PC computers. I really don't enjoy Macs. You go, okay, it's nothing personal. They just wasn't the right fit for that person.
Mm.
It's harder for us because when somebody says to you, I don't want you, it's kind of like, you ask somebody out on a date and they go, no, thanks, not interested. It's easy to take that personally. But the reality is maybe, you just aren't a good match for that person. That's all. And it doesn't mean that you're not great. It doesn't mean that you might not go out with somebody else. But for that one particular person, it didn't work out. So yeah, you do have to be, and that's a good way of putting it. You do have to be thick-skinned and not take it personally. And I'll tell you something that I do, and I'll share it with everybody here because I think it's really helpful. When I go to an audition, I do something differently. Now, when I say I go to an audition, look, pretty much every audition, not pretty much, every audition that I've done since the beginning of the pandemic has been self-tapes. I shoot all my auditions at home. But when I was going into casting directors' offices, but even though I still have the same frame of mind, even if I shoot it here, I don't try to book the job,
Yeah.
which I know it's a little counterintuitive because most people would say, what do you mean you don't want to book you're not trying to book the job? Why else would you spend the time preparing, shooting, editing, uploading it, unless, you're trying to book the job? I don't try to book the job. My number one goal, and once again, let me just back up for a second. Everybody has different ways of doing it, and whatever works for you is great. Some people like to manifest things. They imagine themselves at the red carpet. They're walking up the steps to get an Academy Award for this film that they're about to work on. And look, if that works for you, do it. Doesn't
Mm.
work for me. My number one goal for every audition that I have, because I know I'm not going to book it, is I want to enjoy myself. I think, you know what? It's a Tuesday afternoon. I get a chance to play. I get a chance to act. Might only be 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but that's fun for me. And that's how I go into every audition. And then the second goal is I want to learn from it. After I finish the audition, I'll analyze it for myself just really quickly. Did I do what I wanted to do? Which is one of the nice things about doing a self-tape because I can look at it, I can watch it, and if there's something I want to change, I can easily do that. but I'm never thinking of booking the job. And I'm not saying I'm not going to get the job because I think I'm horrible and I don't have any talent. And look, I have some skills. I mean, I know I didn't. It's not a coincidence that I booked almost 1,300 jobs, but I'm not the greatest actor in the world. I do some things okay, and people like it, and that's why they hire me for that. But I think when you go in there, I want to get this thing. I want to work with this actor. This could change my career. I could make a lot of money. All of a sudden, you start building all this stuff up. And I think you start putting a lot of pressure on yourself. When you go in there and just try to have a good time, that's
Yeah.
it. And I truly believe that that feel comes out in your read, even if it's just with your slate, the way that you introduce yourself. Because casting directors, they can smell desperation a mile away. It's just like going back to that whole dating concept. Hey, if you ask, you go out on a date with somebody and the first thing you say, you know what? I think we should get married. I think we should start a family. I think we should get married. I think we should buy a house together. It's like, what are you, crazy? We haven't even spent time together and you're already talking to me. You're putting pressure on me and I can feel this desperation from you. And casting directors, they can smell out desperation a mile away. And that's not who they want to work with. They want to work with people who have this feeling of, hey, if I book the job, great. If I don't book the job, that's great. I'll book something else. Somebody who's just there to enjoy themselves. That's who they want to surround themselves with. And I'm sure the directors as well. That's who they want to be spending time with on a set. So I think that's just really, at least for me, that's just really important. Don't try to book the job when you are auditioning. Just enjoy the audition.
Hmm. It's And again, I really like your analogy as well with like the auditioning and the dating thing as well, because the two really resonate with each other and they go hand in hand. And it's just like, well, if you're gonna book something, they say no, you know what I mean, and people take it personally. And when you go on a date and you get rejected, you take it personally again. And it's like the desperation thing, what you just mentioned, then, or well, let's get married, and it's just like, whoa, and then you're going on to this going, I'm getting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
They're being confident,
oh,
and
go
then they're
ahead.
being overconfident. Do you know what I mean? Like, because if you're going to go in there onto this, whether it's a date or whether it's your audition, and you're like, hi, all timid and everything, people are just going to walk all over you, basically. But if you go in and you're like, hi, show a bit of, confidence, then people will like, yeah, okay, he seems a bit interesting, or she seems a bit interesting. Let's see what they're about, and you'll probably more likely get a chance. And it's like, I've been to, obviously, I've not had auditions or anything, but when you go for a job interview as well, it's sort of like the same process as well, because you've got to do something that makes you stand out, because when you have an audition, them people who are looking for these set people, they could have hundreds of people coming in, doing the cast for it all and everything and doing all this acting. So you've got to come in, you've got to be unique and shine differently, because then that way they'll be like, oh yeah, do you remember Aaron? He did this, he did that, and you've got to stand out from everyone else so that they remember you. There's no point in going in just doing your lines, and then they're like, oh, well, it's just like everyone else who's just coming. So no, we don't want him in. Do you know what I mean? So it just
And that
stand out.
okay. Yeah, and you know what? Just like, and I love your analogy of going in for an interview for a job, a job interview. And I talk about this in workshops the exact same way. Like if you're going to meet an agent, you're going to do the exact same thing that you would do if you're going for any job interview. What I would suggest is before you go in for your job interview, look the person up. Try to get a lot of information about the person. You can go, to their social media pages, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram, or, X, Twitter, whatever it is, and find out, hey, do they live in the same area that you do? Did they go to the same school that you do? Do they have hobbies that are of interest? Can you imagine, like, if you went in and I would, just like with agents, if I was going for a job interview, I would think of questions that somebody might ask me and know how to respond. Now, I'm not going to have a sheet of paper when somebody says, well, what kind of things do you like to do, besides work? Well, I'm not going to pull out a sheet of paper and go, well, I like to do. But if you know that this person who's interviewing you is involved in martial arts, and you are too. Now, I wouldn't lie about this stuff, but you've been studying Taekwondo, for 10 years. You can say, well, what, work is very important to me. But I tell you, some of my hobbies are also really, really important. Like I love spending time, and I've been studying Taekwondo for, 10 years now. All of a sudden, man, there's this connection. And like you said, you want something that makes you stand out. You don't have to go in there and, and say, I've done this in my life, and that's why I'm the best person. Everybody who's coming in, has done a lot of really good things. Just like for an actor, if you're meeting with an agent, you don't have to say, well, I did this movie, A Man Called Otto. I was in the scene with Tom Hanks, the train station. And it's like, they see your resume, you don't need to go through that. They want to see who you are as a human being. And once again, these people are going to be working with you. They want to make sure that they feel comfortable with you. So if you're meeting them and you first walk in, whether it's an agent or just a regular job interview, and you treat it like you're meeting somebody at a party for the very first time, and, just go, oh, hi, hey, how are you? I'm Aaron Marcus. That's it. Treat them with the same kind of respect that you would like to be treated with. No more, no less, and just be a human being. And once again, think of some questions that might be thrown at you. And you don't have to memorize any answers, but have a pretty good idea of what you might want to say in response to that. So you stand out. You're somebody they like, somebody they trust, someone they feel comfortable with, and certainly someone that they think is competent.
Again, it's quite interesting, some of the stuff that you said, and and I feel like how our conversation has gone so far, like we've got sort of like similar mindset with things, Obviously, I've said something, and you're like, oh well, that's how I do that analogy, with the workshops and everything. And I just think it's quite crazy. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously we've not spoke or anything prior to the Facebook post. That's about it, really, I suppose. And then a 2-minute brief chat before we came on to the show and everything. But no, it's crazy as well. Do you know what I mean? So I don't want to take too much of your time up already, because we have been on this call for a long time now. So is there anything you'd like to promote yourself? Is there any website? You've got any books out? Now is your time to promote yourself.
Great. Hey, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. So probably most importantly, if you're interested in getting free information from me, just go to my website, and it's How to Act and Model, just HOWTOMODEL.com, How to Act and Model. Oh, did I say the ACT? Yeah, howtoactandmodel.com. Go there. You can sign up to be on my email list every week. I send out really helpful information. You will also find on the website, there's a contact tab. If you ever have a industry question, I'm more than happy to try to answer it for you. Not that smart of a guy, but I can promise if I know the answer, I'll get back in touch with you and let you know. And I'm really good at doing that because, look, I know how difficult it is to break into the industry. It was very hard for me, and I spent years doing things by trial and error. So, I like it. Gives me joy to be able to help other people as well. And that's why I also offer private mentoring. I do this virtually online, and you can read about it on the website. I also have a really helpful YouTube channel just click on the YouTube icon on the website. And I've got over 500 free quick tip videos. You should go there, subscribe, click the notification bell so you always know when I upload a new video. And thank you. Yeah, I did write a book. It's How to Become a Successful Actor and Model, which is great. You can order it from the website. But actually, if you're living outside the US, if you can order it through Amazon, it's much better for me to order it from my website financially, but for you, it's going to be much more economical to order it from Amazon. So I don't have to pay for shipping, across the ocean. Or you can get the electronic version of it from my website. So yeah, those are the main things. Sign up to be on my mailing list, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Instagram. It's just Aaron, Aaron, R for Robert, Marcus, Marcus. So it's Aaron R. Marcus. Yeah, follow me on Instagram, and you can also follow me at the same address on X as well, or LinkedIn. But yeah, I'm here just to try to help other folks out if I can. And also, this was really fun. I'm really glad that we did this, and thank you for those great questions. It was really good.
No, I just want to say a massive thank you to yourself, taking time out of your day, and you've shared a lot of insightful information. I mean, I've took on a lot of information myself, and, I'm quite privileged and I'm very, very honoured to have someone like yourself on my show as well, because, you've got a very, very interesting background, within your career that you've been doing. And yeah, I hope that some people who are watching right now take some insightful information as well. What I will do as well, ladies and gentlemen, is all the information that Aaron's just said, I will get him to give it to me on Messenger, and I will put it on the description of the video for the YouTube channel, and I will also put it in the links as well in the description for the Spotify. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has watched the show today and everything. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has been supporting the podcast. And again, Aaron, just want to say a massive thank you to yourself. And thank you, everyone, just watching.
Well, great. Thank you.